You spent months practicing your Spanish ahead of your trip, ready to impress the locals in Barcelona, only to get off the plane and immediately have everyone speaking to you in English. Does this sound familiar? After 15 years of living in Barcelona and moving to Spain specifically to improve my Spanish, I've seen everything. From waiters that immediately switched to English when I started ordering, to now getting compliments for how well I speak Spanish today. And visitors, when they come to Barcelona, they always ask why everybody switches to English immediately when they start speaking to them. So let's talk about why that happens in Barcelona. Now, I could tell you all sorts of different stories that have happened to me personally over the years, but something that happened just the other day really stuck with me. When I went into a bar to order a coffee to go, there was a girl in line just ahead of me who was ordering, and you could tell that she wasn't a native Spanish speaker, but she had been learning, she had been trying. She could order her coffee, but the girl behind the bar actually had switched into English, not to be rude or anything like that, but just to kind of help her out, and asked her where she was from. Now, this girl was from Poland or something, but had been living in Barcelona for a couple months, and while she was improving, she still didn't have that dominance over the language. So they had a nice conversation, got her coffee, they walked out, and then I got to order. Now I went up, ordered in Spanish, the girl responded to me back in Spanish, and then she did ask me as well where I was from. Now she knew that I wasn't from Barcelona from my accent, but when she asked where I was from and I told her Chicago, she said, "Oh, you can tell that you have a lot of confidence. You speak really well, but you can tell you have a lot of confidence with the language." And that's when it really hit me that it's all about this idea of how important that confidence is when you're speaking is to how you're going to get responded to when you're visiting. Now, a lot of times when people come over and they ask about that automatic switch to English, instead of continuing a conversation in Spanish, there isn't a lot of anger behind it, but there is a little bit of an annoyance that they can't continue to practice their Spanish. But again, when you notice that confidence level, a lot of people, not out of a dismissive attitude, but really out of a politeness factor, some way that they feel that they're really helping you. Maybe you're at a restaurant and you want to order, maybe helping you feel a little bit more comfortable, they make that switch into English. And a lot of times with things that we'll talk about a little bit later, especially within Barcelona, people here might have a better level of English than you do coming over and speaking in Spanish. And it's one of the least favorite things that I have when I go out and travel, because I would love to be able to speak those different languages when you're in different countries. Kind of that feeling of everybody catering to you when they switch over to English, especially being a native English speaker. A lot of times you hear people, and even if you think back to the story that I told at the beginning, the girl that was ordering the coffee, she was Polish. But even her being Polish and the girl behind the bar, who wasn't even from Spain, but was a native Spanish speaker, they switched into English and they were having that conversation where they could connect a little bit better. Now, not being the native language for either of them, I always think that is so much more remarkable. For example, right now I'm filming this in Slovakia. I don't know Slovakian at all, but when I go in, and I probably should have learned maybe a word or two to order a coffee or beer or anything. Beer is pivo, that one was an easy one, but probably should have learned little things. I don't know any of the Slovakian, but everybody, they start in Slovakian and then they switch directly into English. And that whole idea of the accommodation, I've never really liked, even though it's something that's a little bittersweet, right? But I've never really liked because you just miss out on so much. And it's not even just being able to have conversations or things like this, but it is a lot of cultural things that you really miss out on. And that's one of the big things that I'm hoping to take advantage of with the Lingoda lessons. As many of you know, I am doing Italian lessons with the platform Lingoda that really does help targeting those different parts of the languages where you can practice. Now, if you've seen the video that I did about how to learn Spanish, you know that I can't move over to Italy, so these classes are really helping me be able to learn Italian. And you can do all sorts of different things with the different plans that they have, which I really like the flex plan. I don't have a set schedule where I can go and have a class every single Tuesday at 10 in the morning, but with the flex plan, I can pick different timings of the day to be in group lessons, private lessons, or anything. The idea with the group lessons is always really nice because you can see and gives you a better idea of other language learners and their experiences. But if you really want to practice, the best thing that you can do is have those private lessons because you get a lot of speaking experience. And that's what it's all about, just constantly speaking. Now, if I went to Italy today, the waiters would definitely still switch over into English to help me out, but my Italian is improving. And what I really like about all of the different lessons is that you can pick target language. So things like ordering a coffee, which is probably super important in Italy, or even just meeting people and introducing yourself. You can select which lessons you want to take that day, or you can follow the already set plan that they have that'll have you speaking Italian every single lesson. It's a really nice way to have a structured experience when if you're not in the country, you can meet native speakers, have conversations, and learn from them. And right now, if you want to learn Italian, Spanish, French, or any of the other languages they have on the platform, if you use my code patrickguide2025, you'll get 20 euros or the equivalent off on your first lessons. And if you need any encouragement to practice that language and not be worried about how you sound, here's some footage of me bumbling through that Italian just to make you feel better.
Benissimo. Vuole anche un primo piatto o solo l'insalata da mangiare?
Voglio un primero plato, voglio anche un primero plato.
Primo piatto.
Un primo piatto.
Cosa desidera come primo piatto?
Spaghetti, por favore.
Che tipo di spaghetti?
Uff. In Italia es molto difficile, no? Ordenare spaghetti o pasta. Una pasta carbonara.
Benissimo.
As you can see, the waiters are definitely switching to English if they hear me speaking Italian. But I think there's some other factors apart from just the politeness of it and the help to make sure that you can order your food that really play a role in when people switch over into English instead of continuing with Spanish. And obviously the biggest thing is going to be the tourism sector. With Barcelona receiving so many tourists per year, just actually in 2024, there were 15.5 million tourists calculated coming into Barcelona. With people from all over the world, they're not always going to be speaking Spanish. So English is always an easier default, and a lot of times people just assume you can speak English, even if you don't, and switch over to that just because of the amount of people that are coming in. So while Spain as a whole tends to score lower on those English proficiency exams that they have compared to some of those northern European neighbors, especially Scandinavian countries like Norway or Finland, or even into the Netherlands and Germany, you're going to see a lot more English and hear a lot more English in Barcelona just because of the amount of tourism that comes in. The other thing that's going to play a big factor are the expats and people that are from outside of Barcelona living here. I think the stat was the other day that 25% of the people living in Barcelona aren't actually from the city. And I can't remember if that was from outside of Spain or just outside of Barcelona, but you do get a lot of people that are not from the city and definitely not even from Spain as a whole that are living in Barcelona. Do you remember when I referenced getting that coffee? Immediately before going in to get that coffee, I had walked into another place and ordered in Spanish, and the girl behind the bar didn't understand a thing that I said, and I actually had to order in English so that she would understand me. So a lot of times you have people that come in, maybe are working in the center of Barcelona, and English might be a better option. With all of our talk about why people are speaking to me in English and not in Spanish, we failed to mention that there are two different languages when you're over in Barcelona. Yes, you do have Spanish, which is the official language in the entire country, but you also have 3 co-official languages, and Catalan is one of them. Today, in all of Catalonia, there are about 8 million people that live in the region, but you've got about 10 million Catalan speakers around the globe. Compare that to about 500 million Spanish speakers, and it's easy to see why that Spanish would be more of the default for somebody not coming from here than Catalan. But you also have to think of what we were talking about before, with 15.5 million international visitors coming in and only 1.7 million people living in the city proper of Barcelona. You can see why English would also be that default over even Spanish or Catalan. Now, one of the misconceptions that people ask about when they come over to Barcelona is thinking that people are going to not speak Spanish because they speak Catalan. Now, natives, when you grow up here, you are going to speak both. A lot of times, even in the schools, Catalan is the main language, but it's going to depend on the social context, people's backgrounds, all sorts of different things as to whether or not they speak Spanish or Catalan. Now, that's a topic for an entirely different video, but it really does depend on who you're talking to. And when someone isn't from the city, it is much more easy to default into that English than into Spanish or Catalan. So if you're visiting Barcelona and you get frustrated that you're trying to speak in Spanish and the locals continue to speak to you in English, remember that it is a lot of times out of politeness and not this rude, dismissive attitude that sometimes it can come off as. And if you're trying to make sure that you want to get more comfortable and practice that Spanish, remember that you can use things like Lingoda while you're home prepping for that next trip. But watch this video next so you can find out some other things that you can do apart from classes that are going to get you more confident, have those locals speaking to you, and learn Spanish just like I did.